Seton, what's the poll question? And did we change it in hour 2 or hour 3?
Well, we've actually had 2 poll questions going for most of the show.
Okay. Double dipping.
Yeah. We're double dipping today. Would you rather miss the playoffs or get swept in the first round? Well, this is interesting because 65% of our Twitter audience says miss the playoffs, whereas the danpatrick.com poll question, that audience, 50-50.
Well, let me ask Nick Wright that. First things first, co-host on Fox Sports 1. Would you rather be the Lakers or the Nets?
Well, those are 2 different questions. I think making the playoffs is better than missing the playoffs. However, I'd rather be the Lakers than the Nets because the Lakers, you at least had time to process that this was going to be a disaster. The Nets were the Vegas favorites to win the conference 14 days ago. The Nets had many of our colleagues buying into this nonsense 5 days ago. So the Nets are a bigger failure, a bigger disappointment. But they did, so the Nets, it was worse. But in the vagaries of miss the playoffs or get swept in round 1, I'd rather get swept in round 1. I'd like to get there. It's similar to I'd rather, make the finals and lose than lose before the finals and then say, oh, I never lost. But that's about a different guy.
I'll get to more NBA. We were talking about 6 years ago tonight. It was Laramie Tunsil with the mask, the bong hit
gas mask bong.
Yeah. And I was wondering what it would be like to Thursday night if that would happen. Like 6 years later, how do you think we would view, let's say, I don't want to say a quarterback because we view a quarterback differently, but let's say it's an offensive lineman and that video came out. How do you think the media?
I don't think it'd be viewed that differently today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, he dropped.
I think he'd drop again today. I think because there were so many. It wasn't just the gas mask bong. It was that it was from his Twitter account, and it's like, wait, he's being extorted. Oh, this seems messy and scary. Yeah, I don't think. Listen, I understand that in most municipalities that are listening right now, you can smoke a joint on the street these days. I still feel like there is still a bit of a some social mores where it hasn't been fully accepted. Like you on your show, Dan, you guys have drank beers. I know you have. I've seen you do it. Would you ever smoke a joint on the air? I don't think you would. Even if you were, I don't know if you're a weed smoker or not. But regardless, I still think there is still some stigma attached to it. I think he'd still drop quite a bit.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening now. As much because the NFL has relaxed its standards or whatever on marijuana. So I mean they don't really care about these players.
I don't really think he dropped because people were like, oh, he's a pothead. I think he dropped because they were like, character issues, bad judgment, who's surrounding him. And I think those same things, let me put it like this. There's not a lot of stigma, I don't think, surrounding consensual sex between adults, but if on draft night somebody's Twitter posted a sex video of themselves, I think they drop. I think it'd be like, we're worried he's going to be having sex. I think it'd be like, well, what the hell's going on here? So I'm looking at it differently.
Fair point. Let's move on.
Okay, listen, you bring me here for hard truths. I thought we were ranking players in NBA history. Instead, you made me talk about sex videos.
Yeah, you don't need to say hard truth. The Nets situation, as they move forward, you got the Kyrie, max deal, Ben Simmons, KD getting older and did look a little older with the younger guys in Boston.
He did.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy for Kyrie, by the way. Worst year of his professional life, and he gave himself a raise and a promotion. How about that? Kyrie asked after the game. Kyrie signs in Boston. He's making around $34 million a year. A year into it, he's like, by the way, I'm co-head coach. It's like Steve Nash is here, but I'm kind of the coach. KD's kind of the coach. A year later, he's like, okay, this year I barely showed up for work. I was terrible in the postseason. Here's what I've decided. I'm going to make about $45 million a year, and I'm co-general manager. I'm going to build the roster with Joe Tsai and Sean Marks. This dude is delusional, man. Delusional. I'll ask your audience, put this on your poll question. What's your favorite Kyrie Irving playoff moment that doesn't involve LeBron James? Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I think it's in round 1 stomping on that stupid leprechaun.
Yeah.
I think that's as good as it's ever gotten for him.
But they're stuck with him. They got to pay him this money.
Yeah, I feel. I mean, I feel terribly for Durant. I mean, I do and I don't, but yeah, I mean, they're screwed. I mean, they are screwed, man. Like, really, what choice do you have? You can't let him walk. Yeah, it'd be like, oh, they'll sign him and then trade him. I reported 9 months ago, and I was correct on it, that when the Nets were considering trading Kyrie, he made it very clear, you trade me if you want, but I'll retire. That kind of hurts your trade market. So what are you going to do? I know our colleague Stephen A. has been saying he would pay him the max, but only 1 year at a time. Kyrie ain't going to take a 1 year deal. I mean, Kyrie, listen, and by the way, now that he's co-GM, I think he negotiates with himself. I think he says, Kyrie, open your third eye. What contract would you like? It's like, 3 years plus player option of the max. Like, you know what, Kai? I think we can do that. Hope to show up for more than 30 games.
So what do you do with Ben Simmons? Feels like you're stuck with him as well.
Oh, boy. All right, I don't know if this is a defense of Ben Simmons. Can I soft launch a take?
Sure.
I believe Ben Simmons' back is truly hurt, and I believe he didn't suffer a back injury. I think we know enough about the mind.
Psychosomatic.
Yes, stress and anxiety can cause ulcers, can cause back pain, among other things. So this idea he's faking an injury, I do not buy it. I believe that his back hurts, that he feels like he has an injury, but I also don't think he ever suffered an injury. Does that make sense? And I don't think that's like a scurrilous allegation. It's the only thing that tracks to me. I do think he wants to play basketball at some point, but I think he's so deep in his own head, I think it scares him. And I think it is causing the back pain.
I just think the Nets handled it so poorly. Instead of having one voice, and Steve Nash should have said at every press conference, Ben is not playing. Ben is not playing. Now, Ben didn't help out by saying, I can't play in game 3, but, there's a reasonable chance I could play in game 4. One voice, because you're not sure who's telling you the truth and who's not.
I didn't have a lot of sympathy for Nash this year because I thought he did a truly terrible job. But in this one, I feel terribly for him. The hell's he supposed to do? And Nash was pretty consistent with it. But then Woj Shams would be like, hey, Ben Simmons targeting this date, targeting that date. Be like, what the hell's going on here? That's a mess. So I don't know. I mean,
who would leak that?
I missed a full year.
Who would leak that, Nick?
I have a theory. I have another theory. Oh boy. Okay. You know what? My true north is take integrity, even if this gets me some angry texts. I don't know this and I can't prove this, obviously. I wonder if people close to Ben were trying to add pressure in a positive way to get him on the court. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That if it's okay, he might play, he might not play. We think he should play. We think it's good for him to play. If we help put out there, there is a date that maybe that will get him on the court, and that's his get back on the horse moment, and then his career can finally turn the page. Because the reason this is such a disaster is even if he plays game 1 of next year, so many of these questions and concerns are going to come back the moment the playoffs start. Because his last moment he didn't get 10 minutes in these playoffs. His last moment in the playoffs was the worst moment of his professional life. It's not great.
Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday, that maybe somebody was trying to not goad him into playing, but trying to push him into, come on, let's go. Let's get back on the horse here. And
like I did with the dinner invites. Just keep subtly bringing it up until you feel obligated to eventually do it.
Yeah.
It's exactly that strategy.
But my back was hurting when we went to dinner as well.
Yeah, I know. You self-medicated too, buddy.
But
my God, I didn't get a sip of that wine.
But I do. I do make my free throws.
You do make your free throws. Can I ask you a question? I don't know how much time we have. But I have 2 Kevin Durant questions.
Okay.
For you.
All right.
Has Kevin Durant ever been the best player in basketball? And if so, when?
I've said no. I get into this discussion with Doug Gottlieb. Gottlieb is like, KD
oh my God, Gottlieb, he's been the best player for 6 years.
I know. And
my God, it's so stupid.
And I said to him, no, LeBron has always been better than Kevin Durant.
So last year, one could argue, with LeBron getting hurt, not playing great in the playoffs, that Durant passed him. But then last year, Giannis passed them both. And now it's Giannis. All right, here's the next question, because here's the other thing. You know how much I care about ranking players. I feel like, so Bill Simmons, who cares even more about ranking players than me and wrote one of the greatest books on basketball ever, and I have tremendous respect for, he keeps just casually saying KD is one of the 10 greatest players ever. Not only do I not think that's right, I don't think anyone actually thinks it if you name the names. So just walk with me here and stop me if there's anyone you think there's an argument KD's better than. LeBron, Kareem, Michael, Magic, Wilt, Russell. We're at 6. Already off the top, no question. Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, Larry Bird. We're at 9. To be top 10, you have to then be better than everyone else. I have not mentioned Akeem. I have not mentioned Shaq. I have not mentioned Dr. J. To me, those are 3 more clearly. Now we're at 12, and here's the other problem for KD. Is it ridiculous for me to say he's going to end up the 4th best of his era? LeBron, Giannis, Steph, Durant. Like the post, like that. So to me, KD's a hell of a lot closer to 20 all time than to 10. I didn't even mention Moses. I didn't mention Oscar or Jerry. Oscar and Jerry are tough, and they're so long ago. I'm not going to act like I watched them. But I don't think any of those names jump out to you as, oh, that's Nick. That's ridiculous. Durant's better than that guy.
I'd like to know who Bill Simmons is taking out of the top 10. I'd just be
too.
curious, because at some point, now Simmons isn't taking Larry Bird out of there, but
Nope.
But at some point, somebody's going to make a case for themselves that Larry Bird drops out of the top 10 all time. Just because he didn't have longevity, he did have the 3 MVPs, but you might have Giannis.
I think Giannis is going to replace him.
Yeah.
Right now, like I think Larry is a strong 9, but if you're 9, you're holding on for dear life for that top 10.
Yeah.
I have Larry right ahead of Akeem and Shaq and Dr. J.
What about
Dr. J gets screwed because nobody cares about the ABA, but he was so dominant. But go ahead.
What about Steph Curry? If Golden State wins a title this year, to me, Steph Curry would then, does he move ahead? I know people love to say he was never MVP of the finals. I understand all that, but if he wins the title without KD, do we then put him higher on that list?
Yeah, I think if he wins the title this year, he jumps Moses and Dr. J. And I think you start having a real conversation. It's so funny. You couldn't have 2 more dissimilar players of him and Shaq. I've always been an Akeem, a slightly ahead of Shaq guy. But then it's a real, like, Shaq and Steph couldn't be, more diametrically opposed players. But I think it's a real conversation. They would have the same number of rings. I'm not count the rings guy. They would have gotten them very differently. Shaq's all-time apex might be the highest. If you were to tell me one game to save your life, you get any player in league history at his apex, I think I might take Shaq over LeBron, Kareem, and Mike. Like apex Shaq, I'm like, well, I'm getting 40 and 20 and 5, like guaranteed. But he just wasn't there long enough. And Steph, it has to, if the goal is winning, it has to be accounted for. This guy's the greatest teammate this side of Tim Duncan we've seen in 30 years. That he welcomed Durant in. That he is now saying, I'll come off the bench when you need me. That stuff has to matter.
Yeah, I still look at, there's certain guys that I look at and say they're underrated. Like, I think Olajuwon is underrated. I mean, to me, he's
player ever.
He's my favorite. Doesn't he still leads in block shots all time?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He's up there in steals as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And people don't, the thing is, nobody knows. Dude went to the finals in 86. Nobody cares about that. Lost to one of the greatest teams ever in the Celtics. And then the next year in the playoffs, averaged, I don't have it in front of me, but in a series they lost in the first round, averaged like 37 and 17 with 4 blocks a game. They lose in round 1.
Yeah.
Akeem was, and it has to matter that for everyone's like, oh, Michael would have won 8. I don't buy that. But there was an era of Barkley, Malone, Ewing, Robinson, because Duncan wasn't there yet. All Peyton, Kemp, your buddy Reggie Miller, all these guys had 1.5 non-Michael Jordan championships eligible for him. Young Shaq and Akeem got them both. That's got to matter. No, Dream is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And the greatest defensive player other than Bill Russell in NBA history.
And having been fortunate to watch Dr. J in 2 ABA games, and I remember that he played against Denver, and Denver had a great front line, but Dr. J there's nobody like him. But people can't see that. Like, you can see some highlight, but oh my God. And he wasn't a great shooter, but he had this, go back to the Portland series against Bill Walton. He was the best player. They should have given him the MVP in a losing effort.
And here's the thing two things about Dr. J. Broussard brings this up all the time, and he's right. When the ABA and the NBA both existed, and the ABA and the NBA would play each other in exhibitions, the ABA won 2 out of 3. You could argue the ABA was tougher. He's the greatest player in ABA history. Then he goes to the NBA, and before he wins the title with Moses, he took the Sixers to 3 finals. Took the Sixers to 3. Like, no, Dr. J, everyone it felt like 3 years ago, elevated Durant ahead of Dr. J. And it's just like, pump the brakes a bit, a little bit. I think we all thought, it's just unbelievable to me. I was in person at Barclays to watch the greatest game Durant's ever played. 48, 17, and 10 with the Harden on one leg, no Kyrie, game 5 against Milwaukee. That's the last playoff game he won. That's tough.
If I say in the last 20 years, you got one guy to start a franchise with, and I remove LeBron.
Giannis.
Okay. Do you think he's going to be a top 5 player of all time?
Well, the top 5's hard.
No.
I mean, top 5 is a tough one to crack because there's it's the 4 most important transcendent players in league history: LeBron, Kareem, Magic, and Michael. And then, pick Wilt or Russell, whatever your flavor is. So I don't know if you want it. So you really only have, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be top 5 all time. I do think he's going to pass Kobe and Duncan and Bird. I think he's going to win this year. He's unbelievable. I think that for the next 8 years in the NBA, it's Giannis and Luka. And it's the 2020s version of Bird and Magic. It's not just because white, black, and East West, but Luka is, I'm the man that said the Clippers could never make the conference finals with Kawhi and Paul George, and that said the Nets could never make the conference finals. I'm also the man that said the Mavs are going to make the finals. You mark that down, Dan Patrick. This is Luka's 07 LeBron.
Oh, I know.
Year.
I know you've been big on him. They got to survive this series.
Oh, it's over. Survive the series. By the way, I'm moving markets. The Vegas has underpriced the Mavs consistently since Luka's been back.
Yeah.
And this morning I log in, I'm like, oh, Dallas plus 1.5. Well, that seems worth a maximum wager. Mentioned it on the show. Show ends. I look, oh, Dallas -1. Old 2.5 point line movement. Was there any news? No. They saw your buddy Nick Wright put in a wager, and they were like, oh boy, he's been killing us on the Luka stuff. It was Dallas -3 yesterday, Dan. Paid for a small mid-sized luxury sedan with that.
I like that. And next meal on me.
Oh yeah, Wagyu.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I've been looking. I've been looking.
Give my best to Wilds.
Okay, I'll give your best to everyone on my show since you liked all of us equally. I'll talk to you later. See
all right.
You, Dan.
Thank you, buddy. That's Nick Wright,
Bye.
Fox Sports First Things First, FS1. We'll take a break. Back after this.